The wagon had taken hours to get to Red Hollow, and Emma had felt every rut in the road through the worn wooden seat. Her father's old horse, Chester, had earned his rest long ago. But rest was a luxury neither of them could afford, so Chester pulled and Emma drove, and they made it to town just as the October sun began its lazy descent behind the mountains. Red Hollow wasn't much to look at. One main street, buildings that leaned slightly, as if exhausted by the effort of standing upright, and people who measured worth in coin and acreage. Emma had been here before, and each visit had taught her the same lesson. She didn't belong. She tied Chester to the post outside Hastings' general store and took a moment to smooth her dress. It didn't help. The fabric was past saving. Patched so many times, the original color was more memory than reality. Her hands were rough, nails broken short from work. She had tried to scrub them clean that morning, but the frontier had a way of marking you, of making sure everyone knew exactly how hard you had fought just to survive another day. The bell above the door chimed when she entered. Cheerful sound. Wrong context. Margaret Hastings stood behind the counter like a queen, surveying her domain. She was middle-aged, plump in a way that suggested regular meals and zero concern about where the next one would come from. Her dress was store-bought, probably from San Francisco. Deep burgundy with lace at the collar. She looked at Emma the way someone might look at a stray dog. Briefly, then through. "We're about to close," Margaret said, though the sign clearly stated hours until 6, and it was barely 4. "I won't be long." Emma's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I need medicine, laudanum if you have it, and flour, salt, maybe some—" "Laudanum's expensive." Margaret didn't move toward the shelves. "You got money?" Emma felt her face heat. She pulled the small leather pouch from her pocket, the coins inside representing months of selling eggs, butter, anything she could scrape together. She set it on the counter with more force than necessary. Margaret picked it up, weighed it in her hand with theatrical skepticism, then poured the contents out, counted slowly. Too slowly. "This isn't enough for laudanum and supplies both. How much for just the medicine?" "More than this." The door opened behind Emma, bringing in a gust of cool air and the rustle of expensive fabric. She didn't turn around, but she felt the attention shift, felt herself become an obstacle rather than a customer. "Oh, Margaret, I'm so sorry I'm late." A woman's voice, bright and thoughtless. "The dressmaker kept me forever. You know how Madame Bouchard is about proper fitting." Emma stepped aside, trying to make herself smaller. She kept her eyes on the coins scattered across the counter. "Mrs. Pemberton, no trouble at all." Margaret's voice transformed, warm honey where it had been cold stone. "I was just finishing up here." "Finishing up?" Mrs. Pemberton moved closer, and Emma caught the scent of rosewater perfume. "Oh, I see." That "oh" contained volumes. Pity, maybe, but the kind of pity that kept its distance, that didn't cost anything or risk contamination. "I was hoping to buy medicine," Emma said, forcing herself to look up. Mrs. Pemberton was younger than she had expected, pretty in the way of women who had never missed a meal or spent a day in the sun without a parasol. "For my father. He's sick." How unfortunate. Mrs. Pemberton's eyes traveled down Emma's dress, lingering on each patch, each stain that wouldn't wash out. "Margaret, can't you help the poor thing?" "Poor thing." Emma's jaw tightened. "I'm trying to conduct business," she said quietly. "Not looking for charity. Of course not." But Mrs. Pemberton's smile suggested otherwise. She turned to Margaret. "I'll take those silk ribbons we discussed and the tea from China. And oh, do you still have that beautiful lace, the Belgian kind?" Margaret practically leaped into action, pulling down boxes, displaying goods. Her entire demeanor shifted like weather. Emma stood there, watching her coins sit uncounted on the counter, watching herself become invisible. The door opened again, then again. Within minutes, the store had filled with Red Hollow's finest. Women in pressed dresses, men in clean suits, all of them moving around Emma like water around a stone. She heard their conversations, deliberately loud enough to carry. Can't imagine letting oneself go like that. Father should have done better by her. Probably hasn't bathed in weeks. Emma's hands curled into fists. She wanted to scream that she bathed every Sunday, that she worked dawn to dark, keeping their land alive, that her father was dying, and she was so tired, she sometimes forgot what it felt like not to be tired. But she didn't scream. She stood there, bleeding from cuts they couldn't see, while they bought their luxuries and pretended she wasn't human enough to wound. "Miss," Margaret finally returned to the counter minutes later. "I'll need you to take your coins and clear out. We're getting busy. You haven't sold me anything yet. And I won't be. Not today." Margaret's expression held no apology. "You're disturbing my customers. I'm standing here quietly. You're making people uncomfortable." The words hit like a physical blow. Emma reached for her coins with shaking hands, scraped them back into the pouch. The small sound of metal against wood seemed impossibly loud. She was halfway to the door when someone else walked through it. The room didn't go quiet this time. It went still. Different energy entirely. The man was tall, wearing range clothes that had seen work, but were clean, well-maintained. Dark hair, some gray at the temples, age somewhere in the 30s but hard to pin down. He had the kind of face that didn't give much away, lean and weathered, with eyes that looked like they had seen things worth forgetting, but couldn't manage it. When he moved, people shifted to make room. "Caleb." Margaret's voice had found a new register, something in between deference and calculation. "We weren't expecting you today. Need supplies." His voice was low, rough at the edges. "Won't take long." His eyes swept the room and caught on Emma. She saw the calculation happen. The worn dress, the rigid posture, the carefully blank expression of someone holding herself together through force of will. His gaze flicked to Margaret, then back to Emma, and something changed in his face. "You finish your business?" he asked Emma directly. No, I mean, yes, I'm leaving." The words tangled together. "You get what you came for." She could lie, should lie. These weren't her people. This wasn't her place. And the smart thing was to leave and find another way. But something about the directness of his question, the way he looked at her like she was worth looking at, made the truth slip out. "No." He turned to Margaret. "What did she need?" "Caleb, I don't think—" "What did she need?" Margaret's mouth thinned. "Laudanum and supplies, but she doesn't have sufficient funds, and I really must insist." "How much?" "For the laudanum? $3, plus whatever supplies she—" "Give her the medicine and flour, salt, whatever else she needs. Put it on my account." The room exhaled collectively. Emma felt her face burn. "I don't need charity," she said, voice tight. "Didn't offer charity." Caleb looked at her with something that might have been respect. "Offered a business arrangement. You need supplies. I need fence work done on the east section of my land. Trade labor for goods. Fair deal." It wasn't a fair deal. Fence work was brutal labor, and they both knew she was desperate enough to take it, even if he offered half the value. But he was giving her the dignity of calling it even, and that was worth more than the medicine. "Done," she said. "No," Margaret interrupted. "Absolutely not, Caleb. You can't just—" "Can't what?" He turned to face her fully, and his expression held nothing friendly. "Can't conduct business in your store? Pretty sure I spend more in a month here than most of these folks spend in a year. You got a problem with my money?" "Of course not, but what? This woman came in to buy supplies. You planning to sell to her or not? She's not. Margaret caught herself, but not fast enough. She's not one of our regular customers. And now she is. Caleb's voice dropped to something dangerous. You got a policy against new customers I should know about? Mrs. Pemberton stepped forward, smile brittle. Caleb, surely you can understand Margaret's position. We have certain standards in Red Hollow, and when someone comes in looking like, well, like that, it reflects poorly on all of us. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Emma watched Caleb's expression shift, watched something cold and furious move through his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled. More devastating for the control. Standards. He repeated the word like he was examining it, finding it wanting. You want to talk about standards, Mrs. Pemberton? Fine, let's talk about them. Your husband bought his ranch with money from a railroad scheme that left families homeless. Your dress was paid for by charging triple rates to minors who had no other option. You're standing here in silken judgment, and you think that makes you quality. Mrs. Pemberton went pale. How dare you? I dare because I'm tired of watching you people measure worth in dollars while pretending it's character. He turned to address the whole room now, and Emma saw people step back from the force of his anger. You want to know what real standards look like? That woman there, he gestured to Emma, came to town to buy medicine for her dying father. Probably rode hours to get here. Will ride hours back. Then work from dawn to dark, keeping land alive that most of you couldn't survive a week on. She's done that every day of her life, and she'll do it tomorrow and the next day and the day after that. She doesn't quit, doesn't beg, doesn't make excuses, just works. He paused, letting the word settle. So when I look around this room, I see a lot of expensive clothes and easy money and people who've never once had to choose between pride and survival. Then I see her, and I'll tell you what standards look like from where I'm standing. She's the only person in this room worth a damn. The silence was absolute. Emma couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Every eye was on her, but for the first time it didn't feel like judgment. It felt like witnessing, like she had suddenly become visible, solid, real. Margaret recovered first, voice tight. I'll get your supplies ready. Appreciate it. Caleb's anger had banked, but not disappeared. Miss, he looked at Emma, realized he didn't know her name. Whitaker, Emma Whitaker. Miss Whitaker, you make a list of what you need. Take your time. Emma's hand shook as she accepted the paper and pencil Margaret thrust at her. She tried to focus, tried to remember what was critical versus what was simply necessary, but her mind kept replaying his words. Worth a damn. The only person worth a damn. She wrote, laudanum, flour, salt, coffee, sugar, lard, a needle and thread if possible. Then she crossed out coffee and sugar. Necessities only. Caleb glanced at the list when she handed it over, and she watched his jaw tighten slightly. He didn't say anything, just passed it to Margaret, and added in a tone that allowed no argument. And coffee, sugar, 2 pounds of each, plus a good winter coat, if you've got one that'll fit her, and wool socks. That's not, Emma started. Part of the fence work, he said, meeting her eyes. You'll be there through winter. Need proper gear. It was a lie. They both knew it was a lie, but it was a kind lie. The kind that let her take what she needed without breaking. Okay, she whispered. The supplies came to $8.60. Caleb paid without blinking. Emma watched the transaction with something like vertigo, trying to calculate how many days of fence work would equal that sum, knowing it would take months, knowing he knew it would take months, knowing he didn't care. When Margaret wrapped everything in brown paper and twine, Emma reached for the packages, but Caleb picked them up first. "I'll help you load your wagon." Outside, the evening air was cool and clean, free of rosewater perfume and judgment. Chester nickered softly when he saw her, and Emma ran a hand down his neck, grounding herself in the familiar. Caleb loaded the supplies carefully, making sure nothing would shift during the ride home. When he finished, he pulled a small card from his pocket and handed it to her. "My foreman's name is Jake Dawson. You come by the ranch when you're ready to start work. He'll show you what needs doing." Emma looked at the card, Cross Ranch, written in neat script with directions. "I'll come tomorrow," she said. "Your father will still be sick tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that." The words came out harsher than she meant. "Sorry, I need to work, need to feel like I'm doing something." Caleb nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. "Tomorrow's fine. Come morning. Stay for lunch. Jake's wife Martha cooks enough to feed an army." "I know." He cut her off gently. "But you'll be doing hard labor, and you can't work on an empty stomach. It's practical, not charity." Everything was practical with him. She was starting to notice. Everything was business, fair trade, logic, and sense. It was a kindness that didn't announce itself as kindness, and that made it possible to accept. "Okay," she said again. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me. You'll earn it 10 times over before we're done." He stepped back, tipped his hat. "Drive safe, Miss Whitaker. That road's rough after dark." She climbed onto the wagon seat, gathered the reins, and drove Chester into the gathering dusk. In the side mirror, a luxury from when her mother was alive, she saw Caleb standing in the street watching her go. Then she turned the corner, and he disappeared. The ride home took longer than the ride in. Emma let Chester set his own pace. No point pushing him in the dark. The medicine sat beside her, wrapped careful in paper, worth more than $3. Worth her pride, maybe. Worth something she couldn't name yet. The homestead appeared slowly out of the darkness. A small house and smaller barn. Acres of land that her grandfather had claimed, and her father had kept alive through drought, flood, grasshoppers, and sheer stubborn will. It looked rough. Everything did out here. But it was theirs. Hers soon. Though she tried not to think about that. Light showed in the window. Her father was awake. She unhitched Chester, rubbed him down, gave him extra oats, because he had earned them. The supplies went into the house in 3 trips, and by the 3rd trip, her father had managed to sit up in bed. "You're back late," he said. His voice was thin, worn down by the cough that was killing him. "Trouble?" "No trouble." She set the packages on the table, pulled out the laudanum. "Got the medicine." "How much?" "Don't worry about it." Emma. He knew her too well. What it cost. "Fence work." She poured him water, measured out the dose the way Doc Harris had shown her. "Found someone who needs labor. Traded for supplies." Her father took the medicine, grimaced at the bitter taste. "Who?" "Caleb Cross." The name landed like a stone in still water. Her father's eyes sharpened despite the pain and exhaustion. "The Cross Ranch?" "Emma, that's work," she interrupted. "Just work. I start tomorrow." "That's not just work. Cross is—" He struggled for words, breath rattling. "He's one of the biggest landowners in the territory. People talk about him like he's half legend. You be careful there." "I will. I mean it. Men like that, they don't do favors without wanting something back. He wants fence work, that's all." But lying in bed that night, listening to her father's labored breathing in the next room, Emma wondered. Caleb Cross had defended her in front of the whole town, had paid for her supplies without hesitation, had given her work she desperately needed and probably couldn't physically manage alone. Why? She turned the question over in her mind, examining it from different angles. Maybe he was genuinely kind. Maybe he saw her struggle and wanted to help. Maybe he had his own reasons, his own agenda, and she was too naive to see it coming. Or maybe, and this was the thought that kept her awake, maybe he had simply told the truth. Maybe he looked at her and saw someone worth defending, worth helping, worth treating like a human being instead of an inconvenience. She didn't know which possibility scared her more. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows in their frames. Winter was coming. It always came, relentless and cruel. And this year, she would face it with a dying father, a failing farm, and a debt to a man she didn't understand. But she would face it. She always did. Emma pulled the thin blanket up to her chin and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she would start work at Cross Ranch. Tomorrow, she would begin paying off the debt that wasn't really a debt. Tomorrow, she would figure out what Caleb Cross actually wanted from her. Tonight, though, she let herself feel something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Fragile and tentative, probably stupid, but there nonetheless. In the general store, Margaret Hastings had looked at her like she was nothing. Caleb Cross had looked at her like she was everything. Emma fell asleep trying to figure out which one was lying. Dawn came cold and gray, the kind of morning that made everything harder. Emma woke to her father's coughing, a wet, rattling sound that seemed to shake the walls. She was up and moving before she was fully awake. Years of practice making her hands steady as she measured another dose of laudanum. "You don't have to go today," her father said when he could breathe again. His face was gray, slicked with sweat despite the cold. "One more day won't matter." "It will if Cross thinks I'm not serious about the work." Emma helped him drink, then pulled the quilt up higher. "I made porridge. It's on the stove. Try to eat some." "Emma, I'll be back before dark." She was already moving toward the door, grabbing the coat Caleb had bought her. It fit almost perfectly, heavy wool that would actually keep her warm. She tried not to think about how much it had cost. Rest. That's all you need to do today. Just rest. The ride to Cross Ranch took time, following directions that were surprisingly precise. The land changed as she went, from scrub grass and rocky soil to rolling hills with actual green showing through. Cattle grazed in organized pastures, fences in good repair, gates that hung straight. Money, Emma thought. This was what money looked like when it was put to work. The ranch house appeared around a bend, and Emma had to work to keep her expression neutral. It wasn't a mansion. Nothing out here was, but it was substantial. 2 stories, stone foundation, real glass windows that weren't cracked or patched, barns and outbuildings spread out in a careful arrangement, everything placed for maximum efficiency. A dozen men worked in various areas, their movements practiced and sure. She tied Chester near a water trough and stood there for a moment, suddenly aware of how she must look. The coat helped, but her dress was still patched, her boots still worn through in places she had tried to cover with tar. She didn't belong here any more than she had belonged in the general store. "You Whitaker?" Emma turned. The man approaching was built like a tree stump, with a face that suggested he didn't smile often, but might if you gave him good reason. He wore a foreman's vest, leather worn soft from use. "Yes, Emma Whitaker." "Mr. Cross said Jake Dawson." He stuck out a hand, shook hers with surprising gentleness given the size of his grip. "Caleb mentioned you'd be coming. You had breakfast?" "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Jake studied her with eyes that had seen plenty of people lie about being fine. "Martha's got eggs and bacon going. Coffee, too." The real stuff. Emma's stomach chose that moment to growl loud enough to be heard. She felt her face heat. Jake's expression might have been amusement. Hard to tell. Come on, work better on a full stomach, and Martha hates waste. The kitchen was warm, filled with the smell of food and coffee and something baking. A woman who could only be Martha stood at the stove, gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, wearing an apron over a simple dress. She looked at Emma the way Emma's mother used to look at stray cats, assessing but not unkind. "Sit," Martha said, already loading a plate. "You look half-starved." "I'm not." "Sit." There was no arguing with that tone. Emma sat. The plate that appeared in front of her held more food than she usually ate in a day. Eggs, bacon, fried potatoes, fresh bread with butter. Real butter, not the lard she used at home. "Eat," Martha commanded. "All of it. You're going to be working hard, and I won't have you fainting out there because you're too proud to accept a meal." Jake poured coffee, set the cup within reach, then loaded his own plate and sat across from her. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that suggested this was routine, normal, nothing to make a fuss about. Emma forced herself to eat slowly, to not gulp it down like the starving thing she was. The food was good, better than good, and she could feel her body respond to it, some tight, anxious thing in her chest loosening slightly. "Fence work on the east section," Jake said eventually, mopping up egg with bread. "Wire's in good shape mostly, but the posts are rotting through. Need replacing before winter hits hard." "How many posts?" 100, maybe 120. "You done this kind of work before?" "Some. My father taught me the basics." Jake nodded. "I'll ride out with you, show you what needs doing. You run into trouble, you come find me. Don't try to hero through it. I can handle it." "I'm sure you can, but if a post breaks wrong and catches you, you being able to handle it won't matter much when you're bleeding out in a field." He said it matter of fact, no condescension, just truth. Smart workers know their limits. Stupid ones end up dead. Emma took the point. "I'll come find you if there's trouble." Good enough. They finished eating, and Martha wrapped extra food in cloth and handed it to Emma like it was nothing. "Lunch, and don't you dare argue." Outside, Jake saddled a horse with the easy competence of someone who had done it countless times. Emma followed on Chester, and they rode east through land that looked like someone actually cared about it. The grass was managed, the water sources clear, the whole operation running with a precision that spoke of knowledge and money working together. The fence line appeared gradually, stretching north to south as far as she could see. Jake dismounted, walked along it with a critical eye, pointing out posts that needed replacing. "These here are pine. They rot faster. We're switching to cedar where we can, last longer." He demonstrated the technique, digging out the old post, setting the new one, packing it solid. "You don't have to go fast, just do it right. One good post is worth 10 shitty ones." He worked alongside her for the first hour, making sure she had the rhythm down, that she understood the depth and the packing and the way to test if it was solid. Then he left her with tools, extra posts stacked nearby, and a canteen of water. "I'll check on you around noon," he said. "You need anything before then? Fire 3 shots." He nodded toward the rifle secured to her saddle. "Anyone here will come running." Then he rode off, and Emma was alone with 100 rotting fence posts, and the kind of silence that made you hear your own thoughts too clearly. She started digging. The work was brutal. The ground was hard, the posts heavy, and within an hour, her hands were blistered despite the gloves Jake had provided. Her back screamed, her shoulders burned, and she could feel the beginning of what would be serious pain tomorrow. But she kept going, one post at a time, refusing to think about how many were left or how long this would take. By noon, she had replaced several posts. It didn't look like much, a tiny section of completed work in an ocean of what remained. But it was something. It was progress. Jake appeared right on time, assessed her work with a quick glance, and nodded approval. Good depth, solid pack, you're learning. Only the rest to go. Thereabouts. He handed her a canteen of fresh water. Eat your lunch, rest a bit. This isn't a race. Emma wanted to argue, to keep working, to prove she could do this, but her hands were shaking, and she knew pushing too hard would only make tomorrow worse. She sat in the shade of a scrub tree and unwrapped Martha's lunch. Thick sandwiches, apples, cookies that were still warm. Jake sat nearby, eating his own food, not talking, but not leaving either. After a while, Emma broke the silence. How long have you worked for Mr. Cross? Years, give or take. What's he like? I mean, really like? Jake considered the question, chewing thoughtfully. Fair. Expects a lot, but he'll work right alongside you if that's what's needed. Doesn't ask anything of his people he wouldn't do himself. He paused. He's got his own demons. We all do. But he's a good man to work for. Good man to know if you're smart about it. What do you mean, smart about it? I mean, he sees things other people miss, sees potential, sees what someone could be, not just what they are. Jake looked at her directly. He saw something in you worth defending. That's not nothing. Emma didn't know what to say to that. She focused on her sandwich instead. People in town are talking, Jake continued, about what happened in the store, about Caleb standing up for you like that. Bad talk? Some, but there's always bad talk. Ignore it. Easy for you to say. No, it's not. Jake's voice was quiet. I came here years ago with nothing, less than nothing. I was running from a past that would have killed me if it caught up. Caleb gave me work when no one else would, gave me a chance to be something other than what I was. He stood, brushed crumbs off his pants. Point is, sometimes people see you better than you see yourself. Sometimes that's worth paying attention to. He rode off before Emma could respond, leaving her with half a sandwich and thoughts that tangled like barbed wire. She worked until the light started to fail, replacing more posts. At this rate, it would take time to finish. Time of riding out here, working until her body gave out, then riding home to take care of her father. Time of debt that she would never really repay. Not in labor. Not in anything that mattered. But it was work. It was honest, and it was hers. The ride home was long and cold, and Emma felt every mile in her back, her shoulders, her hands. Chester plodded along patiently, and she let her mind drift, too tired to fight the thoughts that came. She thought about Caleb Cross, about the way he had looked at her in the store, not with pity, not with judgment, but with something like recognition. Like he knew exactly what it felt like to stand in a room full of people who thought you were nothing. She thought about Jake's words. He saw something in you worth defending. She thought about her father's warning. Men like that don't do favors without wanting something back. The homestead appeared in the darkness, and Emma felt the familiar weight settle back onto her shoulders. Inside, her father would be waiting, probably worried, definitely in pain. The medicine would only last so long, and then what? Another trip to town? Another humiliation? But when she opened the door, her father was sitting up in bed, looking marginally better than he had that morning. Not good. He would never be good again. They both knew it, but alive. Present. How was it? He asked. Hard. Emma hung up the coat, started building up the fire. But fair. The foreman, Jake, he's decent. Showed me what to do. Didn't make me feel stupid for not knowing. And Cross? Wasn't there. Just Jake and his wife, Martha. She didn't mention the breakfast, the lunch, the way they had treated her like a person instead of a problem. Her father would only worry more. She made dinner from the supplies Caleb had bought. Real coffee, real sugar, flour that wasn't mostly dust. Her father noticed but didn't comment, and they ate in silence that was almost comfortable. Later, lying in bed, Emma examined her hands in the moonlight. The blisters had broken, leaving raw patches that would hurt like hell tomorrow. Her shoulders throbbed, her back was a solid mass of pain, and she was pretty sure she had pulled something in her left leg. She smiled. It hurt, but it was honest hurt. The kind you earned, the kind that meant something. Tomorrow, she would do it again. And the day after that. And the day after that. Until the fence was done, or she was. The days developed a rhythm. Wake before dawn, dose her father with laudanum, ride to Cross Ranch, eat breakfast in Martha's kitchen, while Jake gave her the day's assessment, work until her body screamed for mercy, eat lunch, work more, ride home, take care of her father, sleep, repeat. By the end of the first stretch, Emma had replaced dozens of posts. Her hands had calloused over the blisters, her back had stopped screaming and settled into a steady ache, and she had learned the particular satisfaction of seeing a line of straight, solid posts where rotting ones had been. She still hadn't seen Caleb cross. "He's away on business," Martha explained one morning, refilling Emma's coffee. "Should be back soon." Emma told herself she wasn't disappointed. This was work, not socializing. She didn't need to see him to do the job. But she thought about him anyway. Wondered what kind of business took someone away. Wondered if he thought about the girl he had defended in the general store, or if she had already faded into the background of his much larger life. One day, a storm rolled in. Emma saw it coming from miles away, dark clouds building like a wall. But she kept working. She had done many posts, and she wanted to hit another milestone before the week was out. Just more. She could do more. The rain started as a whisper, then became a shout. Within minutes, Emma was soaked through, mud sucking at her boots, the post she was trying to set sliding sideways no matter how she packed it. "Stubborn doesn't beat weather," a voice said behind her. Emma spun. Caleb Cross sat on his horse, rain streaming off his hat, looking at her like she was a particularly interesting problem to solve. "I can finish this one," she said. "You can, but you'll be miserable doing it, and the post will settle wrong anyway. Ground's too soft now." He dismounted, walked over, examined her work with a critical eye. "You've done good work here. Real good. But there's no shame in stopping when the weather says stop. I have many done. I wanted more." "Why?" The question caught her off guard. Because I'm supposed to do many. I need to keep pace." "According to who?" "According to the deal. Fence work for supplies." Caleb was quiet for a moment, rain running down his face. Then he said, "Emma, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it. The deal was fence work. It wasn't fence work at a specific pace or a specific timeline or killing yourself to meet some quota you made up. You're doing good work. That's enough." "It doesn't feel like enough." "I know." His voice was gentle. "But that's about you, not the work. Come on, let's get you out of this rain before you catch pneumonia." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to prove she could tough it out. But her teeth were chattering, and she couldn't feel her fingers anymore. She let him help her onto Chester, then followed him back toward the ranch house. In the barn, Caleb showed her how to rub Chester down properly, checking hooves and legs with practiced hands. "Good horse," he said. "Old, but he's got heart." "He was my mother's." The words came out before Emma could stop them. "She died when I was young. Chester's the last thing of hers we kept." Caleb nodded like he understood about keeping things that mattered. "You take good care of him." "He takes good care of me." They walked to the house together, and Martha took one look at Emma and immediately started barking orders. Hot bath, dry clothes, soup, no arguments. Emma found herself hustled upstairs to a real bathroom with a real tub, hot water already running, and clothes laid out that looked like they might actually fit. The clothes were simple. A work dress, clean and whole with no patches. Undergarments that weren't worn thin. Wool socks. Emma stood there, drippity-dick on the floor, staring at them like they might disappear. A knock on the door. Martha's voice. "Those were my daughters. She moved away. Said I could do what I want with what she left behind. They'll fit you better than they fit me." Emma's throat tightened. "I can't." "You can and you will, because I'm not having you catch your death in wet clothes. Now get in that bath before the water gets cold." The bath was possibly the best thing Emma had experienced in years. She scrubbed off days of dirt and sweat, soaked until her muscles unclenched, and tried not to think about how much water she was using, or what it cost to heat this much at once. When she finally emerged, clean and dressed in clothes that felt like luxury against her skin, she found Caleb and Jake in the kitchen with Martha, all of them eating soup and cornbread, and like this was normal. Like having the hired help join them for meals was just what people did. "Sit," Martha commanded, and Emma sat. The soup was thick with vegetables and beef, the cornbread sweet and crumbling. Emma ate slowly, hyper-aware of Caleb across the table, the way he moved, the way he listened when Jake talked about the herd rotation. "Your father doing better?" Caleb asked suddenly, looking at Emma. "Some. The medicine helps." "Good." He broke off a piece of cornbread, considered it. "I heard about what happened with Doc Harris." Emma went still. "What did you hear?" "That he wanted money up front for a house call, that you couldn't pay it." Heat flooded Emma's face. "That's nobody's business but mine." "You're right, it's not." Caleb's tone was mild. "I'm just saying, Doc Harris owes me a favor. A big one. If you need him to come out and check on your father, I can make that happen. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's me calling in a debt. Harris gets to clear his conscience, your father gets proper medical attention, and I get to feel like I did something useful today. Everyone wins." "Except me," Emma said quietly. "I just keep owing you more." Caleb set down his spoon, looked at her directly. "Emma, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want an honest answer. Do you think I'm keeping a tally? Do you think I'm sitting here with a ledger, writing down every meal, every dose of medicine, every fence post, calculating what you owe me? I don't know what you're doing. I'm helping someone who needs help, that's all. No tally, no debt, no expectation of payment beyond you showing up and doing honest work, which you've done. You've done more than I asked." He leaned forward slightly. "The only person keeping score here is you, and it's eating you alive." The words hit too close to truth. Emma looked down at her soup, vision blurring slightly. "My father says men like you don't do favors without wanting something back." "Your father's right usually." Caleb's voice was quiet. "But sometimes people help because they remember what it's like to need help. Sometimes they help because it's the right thing to do. And sometimes," he paused, "sometimes they help because they see someone worth helping, and they don't want to watch that person break under weight she shouldn't have to carry alone." Emma couldn't look at him, couldn't speak. If she did, she would cry, and she had promised herself she wouldn't cry, not here, not in front of people who were being kind to her. Martha's hand landed on her shoulder, warm and solid. "Eat your soup, girl, before it gets cold." The moment passed. They finished eating, and Jake started telling a story about a bull that had decided fences were optional, and Martha laughed, and Caleb added details that made it funnier, and Emma sat there, feeling like she had stumbled into someone else's life. Someone who had family and warmth and people who cared. When the storm finally broke, Caleb insisted on riding with her partway home. Road's going to be washed out in places. You need someone who knows which sections to avoid. They rode in silence for a while, the world clean and dripping from the rain. Then Emma said, "Thank you for everything. I know I keep saying I don't need help, but I do, and you've been kind about it." "Kindness doesn't cost much," Caleb said. "Most people just don't think to spend it. Why did you defend me in the store?" He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because I was you once. Different circumstances, but same fundamental problem. People looked at me and saw trash, saw something not worth their time or respect. And one person, just one, looked at me different, saw potential instead of poverty. That changed everything." "Who was it?" "Man named Samuel Cross, no relation despite the name. He was a rancher, needed help, gave me a job when I was young, and had nothing. Taught me everything I know." Caleb's voice was soft, remembering. "He died years ago, left me his land, his cattle, his name. Made me promise to pay it forward however I could. So I'm your good deed." "No." Caleb reined his horse to a stop, waited until Emma did the same. "You're not a good deed. You're a person who's fighting like hell to survive, and I respect the hell out of that. What happened in the store? That wasn't about charity. That was about seeing people treat you like you were less than human, and deciding I was done watching people do that to each other." His eyes were intense, and Emma couldn't look away. "You don't owe me," he continued. "You've earned everything you've gotten through work and grit and refusing to quit. All I did was open a door. You're the one who walked through it." They started riding again, and Emma turned his words over in her mind, examining them for lies, or manipulation, or hidden meanings. She couldn't find any. He seemed to mean exactly what he said, which was somehow more terrifying than if he had had ulterior motives. At the fork where their paths diverged, Caleb touched his hat. "See you tomorrow? If the ground's dried enough to work? Even if it hasn't, Martha likes having you for breakfast. Says you're less grumpy than the rest of us." Emma almost smiled. "I'll be there." She rode the rest of the way home feeling lighter than she had in months. The new clothes warm against her skin, her stomach full, her mind turning over everything Caleb had said. Her father was awake when she arrived, and he took one look at her and said, "What happened?" "Nothing. Storm came in, had to wait it out at the ranch. You're wearing different clothes." "Mine got soaked. Martha lent me these." Emma hung up her wet things to dry, started building up the fire. "Mr. Cross was there. We talked." "About what?" Emma hesitated, then told him everything. The conversation about debt, about helping, about Caleb's past. When she finished, her father was quiet for a long time. "He sounds like a good man," he said finally. "Yeah, I think he is. Be careful anyway." "Why?" "You just said, because good men can still hurt you," her father interrupted gently. "Not intentionally, maybe. But life out here, it doesn't care about intentions. You get close to people, you start depending on them, and then something happens. Death or distance, or just bad luck. And you're left alone again. Except now you remember what it was like not to be alone. And that's worse, somehow." Emma understood what he wasn't saying. Her mother had been dead years, and her father still looked at the empty space beside him like he expected her to appear. "I'll be careful," she promised. But that night, lying in bed, Emma let herself imagine a different life. One where she didn't have to be careful, didn't have to guard every word and action against the possibility of loss. One where maybe, just maybe, someone like Caleb Cross could look at someone like her and see possibility instead of a problem to solve. It was a dangerous thought, the kind that could break you if you let it grow too big. But she thought it anyway. The next stretch passed in a blur of work and weather and slowly shifting dynamics. Emma finished the fence line with time to spare, every post straight and solid, the kind of work that would last. Jake inspected it with a critical eye, then declared it the best fence work he had seen in years. "You've got a knack for this," he said. "Real talent. You ever think about doing it professionally?" Emma laughed. "I'm a woman. Who's going to hire me to build fences? Someone smart enough to care about quality over appearance." Jake adjusted his hat against the sun. "I'm serious. You could make decent money doing contract work, better than trying to keep a failing homestead alive." The words stung because they were true. Her acres would never be profitable, not really. The soil was too poor, the water too scarce, the location too remote. She was fighting a losing battle, and they both knew it. "I'll think about it," she said, knowing she wouldn't. The land was all she had left of her family. Giving it up would be admitting defeat, and she wasn't ready for that. Caleb started joining her for lunch sometimes, riding out with food Martha had packed, and sitting in companionable silence while they ate. They talked about weather, cattle, the price of beef, safe topics that didn't require vulnerability. But sometimes, the conversation went deeper. Caleb told her about building the ranch up from nothing, about the mistakes he had made, the lessons learned hard. Emma found herself talking about her mother, about growing up on the frontier, about dreams she had had before survival became the only goal. "What did you want to be?" Caleb asked one day, before everything else got in the way. Emma thought about it. "A teacher, maybe. I like learning, like the idea of helping other people learn." "You'd be good at that." "Doesn't matter. It's not practical." Practicality is overrated. Caleb stretched out in the grass, hat tipped over his eyes. "Sometimes you have to do impractical things to stay human." Said like someone who can afford impracticality. Fair point. He adjusted his hat to look at her. "But money's not the same as freedom. I've got resources, sure, but I'm tied to this land same as you're tied to yours, tied to expectations, reputation, the weight of other people's opinions. Different cage, still a cage." Emma didn't know what to say to that. She had never considered that wealth came with its own constraints. They fell into silence, comfortable and easy, and Emma realized with some surprise that she had started looking forward to these lunches. Not just for the food, though Martha's cooking was undeniably good, but for the company, for Caleb's quiet presence, his willingness to listen, the way he never made her feel stupid or small. On her last day of fence work, Martha invited Emma to stay for dinner. "Proper dinner," she specified, "not just eating in the kitchen. We're having guests, and I want you there." "I can't. Your father will be fine for a few extra hours. Jake will ride ahead. Let him know where you are." Martha's tone left no room for argument. "You've worked hard. You deserve a real meal and good company." The guests turned out to be neighboring ranchers and their wives, people who owned land and cattle and opinions. Emma felt her stomach knot when she walked into the dining room and saw them all dressed in their finery, jewelry glinting in the lamplight. She was still wearing Martha's work dress. She didn't belong here, but Caleb met her at the door, offered his arm like she was someone who mattered, and led her to the table. "Everyone, this is Emma Whitaker. She's been doing fence work for us, and she's the reason our east section is actually secure for winter." The introduction was matter-of-fact, professional, giving her status through work rather than breeding. Emma saw the calculation happen in every face, assessing her worth, her place, her right to be there. One woman, older and sharp-eyed, spoke first. "Fence work? How unusual. I didn't think women did that sort of labor." "Most don't," Emma agreed. "But I needed work, and Mr. Cross needed fences. Seemed like a fair trade." "How practical." The word was laced with judgment. "Practicality keeps you alive out here," Emma said quietly. "Seems worth cultivating." Caleb's hand touched her elbow briefly, a gesture of support. "Emma's being modest. Jake says it's the best fence work we've had in years. I'm trying to convince her to do the north section next spring." The conversation moved on, shifting to cattle prices and weather predictions, and the territorial politics of the frontier. Emma ate quietly, listening more than talking, aware of being observed and judged, but less bothered by it than she had expected. Maybe because Caleb had introduced her as someone valuable. Maybe because Martha kept refilling her glass, and Jake told stories that made her laugh. Maybe because, for the first time in years, Emma felt like she was part of something larger than just survival. After dinner, the women retired to the parlor, while the men talked business. Emma found herself cornered by 3 wives who wanted to know everything: where she was from, how she had learned fence work, what her intentions were regarding Caleb Cross. That last question came from the sharp-eyed woman, Mrs. Catherine Morrison, delivered with a smile that held no warmth. "Intentions?" Emma repeated. "Well, it's obvious he's taken an interest in you. A wealthy man, unmarried, defending a poor girl in public, giving her work, inviting her to dinner." Catherine let the implication hang. "He gave me work because I needed it, and he needed fences built. That's all." "Is it?" Another woman, younger, leaned forward with predatory interest. "Because people are talking, saying he looks at you a certain way, saying maybe he's planning something." Emma felt anger rise, hot and sharp. "People should mind their own business." "This is our business," Catherine said coolly. "Caleb Cross is one of the most important men in this territory. Who he associates with, who he elevates, that affects all of us. We have a right to be concerned when he starts showing favor to someone of uncertain background." "Uncertain background?" Emma repeated the words carefully. "You mean poor. I mean unknown. You appear out of nowhere, your father is dying, you have nothing, and suddenly Caleb is defending you in public and giving you opportunities far beyond your station. Forgive us for being skeptical about your motivations." Emma stood, hands shaking with suppressed fury. "My motivation is survival. My father is sick. Our land is failing, and I needed medicine I couldn't afford. Mr. Cross offered work in exchange for supplies. I've done that work, done it well, and I haven't asked for anything beyond what was agreed. If you think I'm some kind of schemer trying to trap a wealthy man, you're wrong. I don't have the energy to scheme. I'm too busy trying to stay alive." The room went quiet. Emma could feel every eye on her, judging, assessing, finding her wanting. Then Martha's voice cut through. "Well said. And for the record, Emma's done more honest work in weeks than most of us do in a year. She's earned her place at this table, same as anyone." Catherine's smile was thin. "Of course, I meant no offense." "Yes, you did." Martha's tone was pleasant. Her eyes were steel. "But Emma's too polite to call you on it directly, so I will. She's a guest in this house, invited by me and by Caleb. You will treat her with respect, or you can leave." The tension stretched, brittle and sharp. Then Catherine inclined her head slightly, conceding the point, if not the argument. The evening continued, stilted and awkward, and Emma couldn't wait for it to end. When she finally escaped to collect Chester and head home, she found Caleb waiting by the barn. "I'm sorry," he said without preamble. "Catherine Morrison is difficult. She's used to being the social arbiter around here, and she doesn't like when things don't go according to her script. She thinks I'm trying to trap you. She thinks everyone's trying to trap someone. It's how she sees the world." Caleb leaned against the barn wall, looking tired. "For what it's worth, I don't think that. Never have. What do you think?" He was quiet, considering. "I think you're one of the strongest people I've ever met. I think you've been dealt a hand, and you're playing it as well as anyone could. I think—" He stopped, started again. "I think I like having you around. I like talking to you. I like watching you work, seeing the way you approach problems, the way you don't quit even when quitting would be easier." Emma's heart was beating too fast. "Caleb?" "I'm not asking for anything," he interrupted gently. "I'm just being honest. You deserve honesty. I don't know what to do with this." "You don't have to do anything. Just know it. And if you ever want more than just fence work and business arrangements, if you ever want to be friends or something like it, I'm here." He pushed off from the wall, tipped his hat, and walked back toward the house, leaving Emma standing there with Chester and a heart that wouldn't settle. She rode home slowly, Caleb's words circling in her head. Friends, or something like it. What did that mean? What could it mean, given the gulf between their circumstances? But she thought about the way he looked at her, the way he listened when she talked, the way he defended her without hesitation, without calculation, just because it was right. And she thought maybe, just maybe, circumstances weren't the only thing that mattered. Her father was awake when she arrived, waiting up despite the late hour. "How was dinner?" he asked. "Complicated." Emma hung up her coat, sat on the edge of his bed. "The other women think I'm scheming to trap Caleb into marriage." Her father's laugh turned into a cough. When he recovered, he said, "Are you?" "No, I'm just trying to survive." "I know that. But from the outside looking in, I can see how it might look different." He reached for her hand, squeezed it with what strength he had left. "Emma, I'm going to die soon. We both know it. And when I'm gone, you're going to be alone out here with a failing homestead and no prospects. If Caleb Cross is offering you a future, even just friendship, you should consider it. Papa, I'm serious. You're young. You should have a life beyond just surviving, beyond just taking care of me." His eyes were wet. "I want better for you than this." Emma couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She squeezed his hand back, held it until he fell asleep, then sat there in the darkness thinking about futures and possibilities and the terrifying prospect of wanting something more than just survival. Winter arrived early that year, sweeping down from the mountains with teeth bared. Emma woke one morning to find frost thick on the windows and her father's breathing rougher than usual. The laudanum was running low again, and the supplies Caleb had bought were nearly gone. She would need to make another trip to town soon, and the thought made her stomach clench. The fence work was done, which meant no more regular visits to Cross Ranch, no more breakfasts in Martha's warm kitchen, no more lunches with Caleb under open sky. Emma told herself it was fine, that she had known it was temporary, that going back to solitude was just the natural order of things. She told herself a lot of lies those first few days. On the fourth morning after finishing the fence, someone knocked on her door. Emma opened it to find Jake standing there with a wagon full of firewood, his expression suggesting he would brook no argument. "Caleb noticed your woodpile's low," he said, already starting to unload. "Figured you could use some extra before the real cold hits. I can't pay for this. Didn't ask you to." Jake stacked logs with practiced efficiency. Consider it a bonus for good work, or don't consider it anything. Just take the damn wood so I can get back before Martha realizes I forgot to pick up flour in town. Emma helped him unload, and when they finished, Jake pulled an envelope from his coat. Also, this is yours, payment for the fence work. But I thought the supplies were the payment. Those were in advance. This is actual wages. He pressed the envelope into her hands. Going rate for quality fence work. Emma stared at the envelope like it might bite her. More money than she had seen in months, maybe a year. I can't accept this. You can, and you will, because you earned it. Every damn penny. Jake's tone was firm, but not unkind. Emma, I've been doing this work for a long time. I know what good labor looks like, and I know what it's worth. You did excellent work. This is what that work costs. Take it. Her hand shook as she opened the envelope, saw the bills inside. Real money. Enough to buy medicine, supplies, maybe even some seed for spring planting. Thank you, she whispered. Thank yourself. You're the one who did the work. Jake climbed back onto the wagon. Caleb wanted me to ask if you'd be interested in doing the north section come spring. Same terms, same pay. You interested? Yes, absolutely. Jake nodded like he had expected nothing less. Good. Stay warm, Emma. And if you need anything before then, anything at all, you send word. He drove off before she could respond, leaving Emma standing in the cold with an envelope of money and the uncomfortable realization that Caleb Cross was still taking care of her, even when she wasn't around to see it. That evening she rode to town despite the cold, despite her father's protests, because the laudanum was truly running low, and she couldn't wait any longer. The general store was less crowded this time, just a few customers browsing the shelves. Margaret Hastings looked up when Emma entered, and something complicated crossed her face. Not quite guilt, but not dismissal either. Miss Whitaker, she said carefully, what can I help you with? Laudanum, 2 bottles, if you have them, and flour, coffee, salt. Emma set money on the counter, real money that she had earned herself. I can pay. Margaret's eyes flicked to the bills, then back to Emma's face. Of course. I'll get those for you right away. The transaction was quick, professional, completely different from the last time. Margaret wrapped everything carefully, made correct change, even offered a small discount that Emma suspected she didn't give to everyone. How's your father? Margaret asked, as Emma gathered her parcels. Dying. The word came out flat, honest. But the medicine helps with the pain. I'm sorry to hear that. And she actually sounded sorry, which was almost worse than the disdain had been. Pity was its own kind of insult. Emma left quickly, loaded her wagon, and was about to climb up when she heard her name called. She turned to find Mrs. Catherine Morrison approaching, wrapped in an expensive coat and what looked like genuine concern. Miss Whitaker, I'm glad I caught you. I wanted to apologize for my behavior at the dinner. I was unnecessarily cruel, and you didn't deserve that. Emma studied her, looking for the trap. Why the change of heart? Because Martha gave me an earful about hospitality and Christian charity and basic human decency. Catherine's smile was rueful. And because Caleb made it clear that you're under his protection, and antagonizing you means antagonizing him. Politics, you understand. So this is self-interest, not actual remorse. A bit of both, if I'm honest. Catherine pulled her coat tighter against the wind. I was wrong about you. I thought you were another desperate woman trying to snare a wealthy husband. But Martha tells me you've done exceptional work on the ranch, that you earned every penny you were paid, and that you've never once asked Caleb for anything beyond fair compensation for labor. That's the truth. Then I misjudged you, and I apologize." Catherine paused, seeming to wrestle with something. "I'm hosting a celebration next month, Founders' Day. All the prominent families will be there, and I'd like to extend an invitation to you." Emma almost laughed. "Why would I want to attend that?" "Because whether you like it or not, you're connected to Caleb Cross now. People have seen him defend you, employ you, treat you with respect. That gives you a certain status, like it or not. And if you're going to have that status, you might as well use it." "Use it how?" "To show people you're not what they assumed. To prove you belong in spaces you weren't born into." Catherine's eyes were sharp, calculating. "Or you can stay home and let people keep telling stories about you without ever seeing who you actually are. Your choice." It felt like a test. Maybe it was. Emma thought about her father's words. If Caleb Cross is offering you a future, even just friendship, you should consider it. Going to the celebration wouldn't be accepting Caleb's offer exactly, but it would be stepping into the world he occupied, claiming space she had never been allowed before. "I'll think about it," Emma said. "Fair enough. The invitation stands." Catherine turned to leave, then looked back. "For what it's worth, I think you're brave. Braver than most of us. We were born into our positions. You're fighting for yours." She walked away before Emma could respond, leaving Emma standing in the cold street trying to process what had just happened. An apology, an invitation, acknowledgement that maybe she wasn't just the poor girl in the patched dress anymore. The ride home was long and dark, and Emma's mind churned the entire way. Part of her wanted to refuse the invitation in principle, to stay away from people who judged her, who still probably judged her, even if they were more polite about it now. But another part, the part that had listened to Caleb talk about being more than just survival, wanted to go. Wanted to walk into that celebration and show them all exactly who Emma Whitaker was. Her father was asleep when she got back, so she sat by the fire and counted out her money. More than she had expected. Enough to last through winter if she was careful. Enough to maybe, possibly, buy a dress that wasn't patched and worn. The thought felt frivolous and necessary all at once. Days later, Caleb showed up at her homestead unannounced, riding a good horse and carrying a bag that clinked with the sound of glass bottles. "Brought your father some medicine," he said when Emma answered the door. "Doc Harris had extra. Thought you could use it." "Extra?" Emma didn't believe that for a second. "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing. It's extra, like I said." "Caleb." "Emma." He dismounted, tied his horse, looked at her with patient exasperation. "Can you please just accept help without turning it into a debt negotiation, please? It's hard for me." "I know, but try anyway." She let him in, watched him greet her father with easy familiarity, discussing weather and cattle prices like they were old friends. Her father seemed better when Caleb was around, more alert, more present. Like having another man to talk to reminded him he was still alive, still part of the world. They stayed talking for a time, and Emma made coffee and listened to them debate the merits of different cattle breeds, the politics of territorial expansion, the likelihood of the railroad coming through this area. Her father knew more than she had realized, had opinions and knowledge that farming alone had never required him to share. When Caleb finally stood to leave, her father caught his hand. "Thank you for everything you've done for Emma, for us. It's nothing. It's not nothing. It's the difference between survival and dignity." Her father's grip tightened. "You take care of her, you hear me? When I'm gone, she'll be alone out here. She'll need someone." "Papa," Emma started, mortified. "I'm serious. She's stubborn and proud, and she won't ask for help, even when she needs it." Someone has to look out for her. Caleb met her father's eyes, and something passed between them, some understanding Emma wasn't privy to. I'll look out for her. You have my word. Outside, Emma walked Caleb to his horse, her face still burning with embarrassment. I'm sorry about that. He shouldn't have. He's your father. He's dying. He wants to know you'll be okay. Caleb gathered his reins, looked down at her. Catherine Morrison came to see me. Said she invited you to the Founders' Day celebration. She did. You going? I don't know. Maybe. Emma crossed her arms against the cold. Do you think I should? I think you should do whatever feels right to you. But if you want my opinion, yeah. I think you should go. I think you should walk in there and show them all who you are. And who am I? Caleb smiled, rare and genuine. Someone worth knowing, someone worth respecting, someone who's done more with less than any of them could imagine. You make it sound easy. It won't be easy. They'll judge you, probably talk about you behind your back, definitely make you feel uncomfortable. He swung up into the saddle, but you'll survive it. Same way you survive everything else. And when it's over, they'll have to acknowledge that you belong in that room, same as they do. What if I fail? What if I say something wrong, or wear the wrong thing, or... Then you'll survive that, too. Caleb's voice was gentle. Emma, you've already survived the worst things life can throw at someone. A room full of judgmental people in fancy clothes? That's nothing compared to what you've already faced. He rode off, and Emma stood there, feeling like she had been given both a challenge and a sift. The challenge to step into a world she had never belonged to. The gift of someone who believed she could. The next stretch was spent in preparation, though Emma tried to pretend she wasn't preparing for anything specific. She used some of her fence money to buy fabric in town. Not silk, nothing she couldn't afford, but good sturdy cotton in a deep blue that reminded her of twilight. She spent evenings sewing by lamplight, creating a dress that was simple but well made, with clean lines and careful stitching. No patches, no worn spots, just honest work transformed into something that might pass for respectable. Martha showed up one afternoon with a basket of food and stayed to help with the dress, offering suggestions about fit and style that came from years of watching what worked in polite society. You're overthinking this, Martha said around a mouthful of pins. It's just a party. People drinking, talking, pretending they like each other more than they do. It's not just a party. It's a test. Everything's a test out here. You passed the last one when you built that fence. You'll pass this one too. Martha pinned the hem, stepped back to assess. Though I'll admit this is a different kind of challenge. Physical work, you know what you're doing. Social work, she trailed off meaningfully. I'm going to embarrass myself. Probably. Most people do at these things. Trick is not to care. Martha met her eyes. Emma, these people, most of them were born into money and position. They've never had to fight for anything real. You walk in there having survived what you've survived, having built what you've built, and you hold your head up. You've got nothing to be ashamed of. Easy for you to say. No, it's not. I was born poor, too. Worked as a maid before I met Jake. I know exactly what it feels like to walk into a room where everyone thinks you don't belong. Martha's voice was firm, but I also know that their opinion doesn't define you. Your actions do. Your character does. The rest is just noise. Emma absorbed that, let it settle. Will you be there? At the celebration? Wouldn't miss it. Someone's got to run interference if Catherine Morrison gets too big for her britches again. Martha finished the hem, helped Emma out of the dress. Besides, Caleb asked me to keep an eye on you. Make sure you're okay. He did? He did, Man's half in love with you, in case you haven't noticed." Emma's heart stuttered. "That's not... We're just friends. He's just helping because he sees something in you that he recognizes in himself." Martha folded the dress carefully. "I've known Caleb for years. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Like you're something precious he's afraid to break. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything. Just let it be what it is. Let yourself feel what you feel. The rest will work itself out." Martha gathered her basket. "Or it won't. Life's funny that way. But either way, you'll survive it." After Martha left, Emma tried on the finished dress and looked at herself in the small mirror over her wash basin. The woman looking back was different from the one who had walked into Hastings' General Store months ago. Still thin, still work-worn, but there was something else now. Something that looked almost like confidence. Her father called from the other room, and she changed back into her work clothes before going to him. He was having a good day, lucid and relatively pain-free, and they talked about small things: the weather, the chickens, the state of the roof that would need repair come spring. "You're going to the celebration," he said eventually. Not a question. "I think so. Yes." "Good. You should." He coughed, took a moment to recover. "Your mother would have liked that. She always wanted better for you than this." He gestured vaguely at the small house, the hard-scrabble life. "She would have liked Caleb Cross, too." "Papa, it's not like that between us." "Not yet, maybe. But it could be." Her father's eyes were clear, seeing more than Emma was comfortable with. "I know I told you to be careful, and you should be, but I also don't want you to be so careful that you miss out on something good, because you're afraid it might hurt. Everything hurts eventually." "True, but some things hurt in ways that make you bigger, stronger, more yourself. Those hurts are worth having." He reached for her hand. "Promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, don't stay here out of obligation. Don't cling to this land, because you think you owe it to me or to your mother's memory. If Caleb Cross offers you a different life, a better life, you take it. You understand?" "Papa, promise me." Emma swallowed hard. "I promise." The next stretch was spent in preparation, though Emma tried to pretend she wasn't preparing for anything specific. She used some of her fence money to buy fabric in town. Not silk, nothing she couldn't afford, but good, sturdy cotton in a deep blue that reminded her of twilight. She spent evenings sewing by lamplight, creating a dress that was simple but well-made, with clean lines and careful stitching. No patches, no worn spots. Just honest work transformed into something that might pass for respectable. Martha showed up one afternoon with a basket of food and stayed to help with the dress, offering suggestions about fit and style that came from years of watching what worked in polite society. "You're overthinking this," Martha said around a mouthful of pins. "It's just a party. People drinking, talking, pretending they like each other more than they do. It's not just a party. It's a test. Everything's a test out here. You passed the last one when you built that fence. You'll pass this one, too." Martha pinned the hem, stepped back to assess. "Though I'll admit this is a different kind of challenge. Physical work, you know what you're doing. Social work." She trailed off meaningfully. "I'm going to embarrass myself." "Probably. Most people do at these things. Trick is not to care." Martha met her eyes. "Emma, these people, most of them were born into money and position. They've never had to fight for anything real. You walk in there having survived what you've survived, having built what you've built, and you hold your head up. You've got nothing to be ashamed of. Easy for you to say. No, it's not. I was born poor too. Worked as a maid before I met Jake. I know exactly what it feels like to walk into a room where everyone thinks you don't belong. Martha's voice was firm, but I also know that their opinion doesn't define you. Your actions do. Your character does. The rest is just noise. Emma absorbed that. Let it settle. Will you be there? At the celebration? Wouldn't miss it. Someone's got to run interference if Catherine Morrison gets too big for her britches again. Martha finished the hem, helped Emma out of the dress. Besides, Caleb asked me to keep an eye on you. Make sure you're okay. He did? He did. Man's half in love with you, in case you haven't noticed. Emma's heart stuttered. That's not, we're just friends. He's just helping because he sees something in you that he recognizes in himself. Martha folded the dress carefully. I've known Caleb for years. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you, like you're something precious he's afraid to break. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything. Just let it be what it is. Let yourself feel what you feel. The rest will work itself out. Martha gathered her basket. Or it won't. Life's funny that way. But either way, you'll survive it. After Martha left, Emma tried on the finished dress and looked at herself in the small mirror over her wash basin. The woman looking back was different from the one who had walked into Hastings General Store months ago. Still thin, still work-worn, but there was something else now. Something that looked almost like confidence. Her father called from the other room, and she changed back into her work clothes before going to him. He was having a good day, lucid and relatively pain-free, and they talked about small things, the weather, the chickens, the state of the roof that would need repair come spring. You're going to the celebration, he said eventually. Not a question. I think so, yes. Good, you should. He coughed, took a moment to recover. Your mother would have liked that. She always wanted better for you than this. He gestured vaguely at the small house, the hard scrabble life. She would have liked Caleb Cross, too. Papa, it's not like that between us. Not yet, maybe. But it could be. Her father's eyes were clear, seeing more than Emma was comfortable with. I know I told you to be careful, and you should be. But I also don't want you to be so careful that you miss out on something good because you're afraid it might hurt. Everything hurts eventually. True. But some things hurt in ways that make you bigger, stronger, more yourself. Those hurts are worth having. He reached for her hand. Promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, don't stay here out of obligation. Don't cling to this land, because you think you owe it to me or to your mother's memory. If Caleb Cross offers you a different life, a better life, you take it. You understand? Papa, promise me. Emma swallowed hard. I promise. Then, Founder's Day arrived cold and clear. The sky that particular shade of blue that only happened in winter. Emma dressed carefully, braided her hair in a style Martha had shown her, and stood in front of the mirror, trying to recognize herself. The blue dress fit perfectly, made her look almost elegant, despite her worn hands and sun-weathered face. Her father whistled when he saw her. You look just like your mother, beautiful. Emma kissed his forehead, made sure he had everything he needed, promised to be back before midnight. Then she climbed onto Chester and rode toward town, her heart beating too fast, her mind spinning with all the ways this could go wrong. The celebration was being held at the community hall, a building that served as church, meeting house, and social center depending on the day. Emma could hear music and laughter from a block away, could see light spilling from every window. She tied Chester with the other horses and stood there for a moment gathering courage. You planning to go in or just stand out here freezing? She turned to find Caleb leaning against the wall, dressed in a suit that looked like it had been tailored specifically for him. He looked different like this. Polished, sophisticated, every inch the successful rancher. But his eyes were the same, warm and knowing. "I'm working up to it," Emma admitted. "Take your time. Party's not going anywhere." He pushed off the wall, came to stand beside her. "You look beautiful, by the way. That dress, did you make it?" Martha helped. "It's perfect." He offered his arm. "Want to go in together? Might be easier than walking in alone." Emma hesitated. Walking in on Caleb Cross's arm would send a message, make a statement. It would confirm every speculation about their relationship. Give Catherine Morrison and her ilk ammunition for gossip. It would also feel safe, protected, like she had someone in her corner. "Yes," she said, and took his arm. The room went quiet when they entered, heads turning, conversations stuttering. Emma felt the weight of every eye, felt the assessment and judgment and curiosity. But Caleb's arm was solid under her hand, and he didn't hurry, didn't try to hide her away. He walked her straight through the center of the room like she belonged there, like he was proud to have her beside him. Catherine Morrison appeared almost immediately, resplendent in burgundy silk. "Miss Whitaker, I'm so glad you came." And Caleb, punctual as always. Her smile was genuine this time, or at least a convincing approximation. "Come, let me introduce you around." The next stretch was a blur of names and faces, handshakes, and small talk. Emma met ranchers and merchants, their wives and daughters, people who controlled land and money and influence. Some were kind, genuinely interested in her story. Others were polite, but cold, doing the social minimum because Catherine Morrison had decreed it. Emma held her own, answering questions about the fence work, her homestead, her father's illness. She didn't lie or embellish, didn't try to be something she wasn't. She just told the truth plainly, and watched people react to a woman who had survived things they couldn't imagine. "You must be very strong," one young woman said, eyes wide with something like admiration. "I don't think I could do what you've done." "You could if you had to," Emma replied. "People are stronger than they think. They just don't know it until they're tested." Caleb stayed close but not suffocating, letting her handle conversations on her own while remaining available if she needed support. Emma was grateful for the balance, for the way he seemed to know exactly when to step in and when to step back. Dinner was served at long tables, and Emma found herself seated between Caleb and a rancher named Thomas Beckworth, who wanted to know everything about her fence-building technique. They talked shop through the meal, post depth, wire tension, wood treatment, and Emma felt herself relax into familiar territory. This she knew. This she could do. "You ever considered doing this professionally?" Thomas asked, echoing Jake's earlier question. "I've got 3 sections that need work, and the men I usually hire are unreliable at best." "I've thought about it," Emma admitted. "But I'm not sure how much business I'd actually get. Most people don't want to hire a woman for this kind of work." "Most people are idiots." Thomas pulled out a card, handed it to her. "You want the work? It's yours. Same rate Caleb paid you. Maybe better if the quality is as good as he claims." Emma took the card, stunned. Thank you. Yes, I'd like that." "Good. Come by next week. We'll discuss details." Thomas turned to talk to someone else, leaving Emma holding a business card, and the dawning realization that maybe she could actually do this. Maybe she could build something real, sustainable, independent. After dinner, musicians started playing, and couples moved to the dance floor. Emma stayed seated, watching until Caleb appeared at her elbow. "Dance with me?" "I don't know how." "I'll teach you. Come on." She let him pull her to the floor, let him position her hands correctly, tried to follow his lead as the music swelled. She stepped on his feet twice, apologized profusely, but he just laughed and kept going. "You're doing fine," he said. "Just relax. Stop thinking so hard." Easy for you to say. You're not the one who's never danced before. Everyone's done something for the first time. This is just yours. He spun her gently, and she stumbled, but didn't fall. "See? You're a natural." She wasn't, but it didn't matter. They moved together across the floor, and Emma felt something shift inside her chest, something that had been locked tight for years starting to open. She looked up at Caleb and saw him already looking at her, his expression soft and unguarded. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for all of this, for making this possible. You made it possible. I just opened a door. You opened a lot more than that." The song ended, and they stood there for a moment, too close, the air between them charged with something unspoken. Then someone bumped into Emma from behind, breaking the spell, and they separated. The rest of the evening passed in a pleasant blur. Emma talked to more people, accepted more job offers for fence work, and slowly began to believe that maybe she actually belonged in this room. Maybe she wasn't just the poor girl being tolerated. Maybe she was Emma Whitaker, skilled laborer, someone worth knowing in her own right. Near midnight, she found Caleb on the porch, looking out at the dark street. The temperature had dropped further, and she could see her breath in the lamplight. "You did well tonight," he said without turning around. "I'm proud of you. I survived it at least. You did more than survive. You showed them who you are. That takes guts." He finally looked at her, and his expression was serious. "Emma, I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen, not argue or deflect, or turn it into a debate about debt." Her heart started beating faster. "Okay. I care about you, more than I should, probably, more than is wise given our circumstances, but I can't keep pretending I don't." He took a breath. "I know you don't need rescuing. I know you're capable and strong and perfectly able to handle your life without my interference, but I want to be part of it anyway, not as some benefactor or employer, but as something more, if you'll let me." Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All she could do was stare at him and feel the weight of everything he was offering, everything it would mean to accept. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything tonight. Just think about it. Think about what you want. Not what you think you should want, or what makes practical sense. Just what you actually want." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "And whatever you decide, I'll respect it. If you want to keep things as they are, I can do that. If you want more, I'm here. Your choice, Emma. Always your choice." He left her standing there, went back inside, and Emma was alone with the cold and the stars, and a heart that felt like it might crack open from the pressure of wanting and fearing and hoping all at once. She rode home slowly, Chester's hooves echoing in the empty streets. Her mind replayed every moment of the evening, the dancing, the conversations, the job offers, Caleb's confession. She had gone to the celebration expecting to fail, expecting to be exposed as an imposter. Instead, she had proven she belonged. She had claimed space in a world that had tried to exclude her, and Caleb Cross had offered her something she had never let herself want, a future that looked like more than just survival. Her father was awake when she got home, waiting up despite the late hour and his deteriorating condition. "How was it?" he asked. "Overwhelming, terrifying, amazing." She sat on the edge of his bed, still wearing the blue dress. "Papa, Caleb told me he cares about me. Like, really cares. And I don't know what to do." "Do you care about him?" "Yes, I think so. Maybe." Emma's hands twisted in her lap. But I'm scared. What if I let myself want this, and then something happens? What if he changes his mind, or I disappoint him, or what if it works?" Her father interrupted gently. "What if you let yourself have something good, and it actually stays good? That's possible too." It doesn't feel possible. I know, but that's fear talking, not truth." He reached for her hand. "Emma, when your mother died, I thought about giving up. Thought about just letting the land take me, letting grief have its way. But you were young and needed a father, so I kept going. And you know what I learned? Living in fear of losing something good is just another way of being dead. You have to take the risk. You have to let yourself be vulnerable. Otherwise, what's the point?" Emma felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I miss her. I miss having someone who knew what to do." "She'd tell you to follow your heart. She always said that was the only compass worth trusting." He squeezed her hand. "So, what does your heart say?" Emma closed her eyes, went quiet. Listened to the part of herself she had been ignoring for months. And underneath all the fear and doubt and practiced self-protection, she found the truth. She wanted Caleb, wanted his steady presence and his quiet strength, and the way he looked at her like she mattered. Wanted a future that included more than just surviving alone on a failing homestead. Wanted to be part of something bigger, something shared, something that felt like belonging. "My heart says yes," she whispered. "My heart says, take the risk." Her father smiled, peaceful and proud. "Then that's what you do." Outside, winter pressed close, and Emma knew the hard months weren't over. Her father was still dying, her land was still failing, and the world was still a harsh and unforgiving place. But for the first time in years, she had something to look forward to. Something that felt like hope instead of just desperate endurance. She fell asleep that night still wearing the blue dress, her father's hand in hers, and dreamed of possibilities she had never let herself imagine before. Morning came with snow, the first real accumulation of the season. Emma woke to find her father struggling to breathe, each inhale a wet rattling, effort that made her stomach clench with familiar dread. She administered the laudanum with hands that had stopped shaking months ago, efficiency born from repetition that she wished she had never had to learn. "It's getting worse," her father said, when he could speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "We both know it." "Don't talk like that." "Emma." He caught her wrist with surprising strength. "We need to talk about what happens after. About the land, about you, about not today." She pulled away gently, started building up the fire. "Today, you rest, and I figure out how to keep the roof from leaking in the back room." But they both knew the conversation was coming, inevitable as the winter itself. She was on the roof an hour later, trying to patch a section of shingles with half-frozen hands, when she heard a horse approaching. Caleb appeared around the side of the house, took one look at her precarious position, and his jaw tightened. "Get down from there, before you break your neck. I'm almost done. Emma." She finished hammering the last nail, then climbed down the ladder with more care than she had used going up. Caleb waited at the bottom, arms crossed, looking like he was trying very hard not to yell. "You could have sent word. I've got men who do this kind of work. I can handle a roof repair. I know you can. That's not the point." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "The point is, you don't have to do everything alone anymore. You have help available. Use it." They stared at each other for a moment, the air between them charged with unspoken things. Emma thought about their conversation at the celebration, about his confession and her father's advice, and the decision she had made in the dark hours before dawn. "Come inside," she said finally. "It's cold, and my father will want to see you." Her father's face lit up when Caleb entered. and they fell into easy conversation while Emma made coffee. She listened to them talk about politics and weather and the probability of the railroad expansion, her father more animated than he had been in weeks. It hurt to watch, knowing these moments were numbered, knowing that soon Caleb would have to talk to empty air if he wanted to continue these conversations. When her father dozed off, exhausted by the effort of staying present, Caleb followed Emma to the kitchen. She poured coffee for them both, her hand steadier now, warmed from the work in the fire. "I've been thinking about what you said," Emma started, not looking at him. "At the celebration, about caring about me, about wanting to be part of my life." Caleb went very still, and I'm scared, terrified, actually, because I've spent so long just trying to survive that I don't know how to do anything else. I don't know how to want things without immediately calculating the cost. I don't know how to let someone in without worrying about what happens when they leave. She finally met his eyes. "But I want to try. With you. If the offer still stands." Something shifted in Caleb's expression. Relief and joy, and something deeper that made Emma's breath catch. "The offer stands. It'll always stand. I don't know what this looks like, what we're doing. Neither do I." He moved closer, careful like he was approaching something that might spook. "But we can figure it out together. No expectations, no timeline, just seeing where this goes. My father's dying. This land is failing. I have nothing to offer you except problems and complications. You have yourself. That's everything." Caleb reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with gentle fingers. "Emma, I'm not here because I want to fix your problems or rescue you from your circumstances. I'm here because when I'm around you, I remember what it feels like to be fully alive. You make me want to be better, do better, build something that matters. That's worth more than any land or cattle or money." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know how to do this, how to be with someone." "Good thing I'm patient." His smile was soft, understanding. "We'll learn together." They stood there in her small kitchen, close enough to touch, and Emma felt the weight of possibility settle around her shoulders. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. This feeling of stepping off solid ground into something unknown. Caleb left before noon, but not before extracting a promise from Emma that she would come to the ranch the next day. "Martha wants to teach you to make her apple pie," he said. "And Jake's got questions about the fence work you did for Thomas Beckworth. You heard about that? Thomas won't shut up about it. Says you're the best contractor he's found in years." Caleb's pride was evident. "You're building a reputation. People are starting to ask for you specifically." After he left, Emma sat with her father and told him everything. His smile was weak but genuine, his hand warm when he squeezed hers. "Your mother would be so happy," he whispered. "She always said you deserved someone who saw you clearly." "I'm still scared." "That's how you know it matters. The things worth having always scare us." He coughed, the sound wet and painful. "Emma, I need you to promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, don't stay here out of obligation. Don't cling to this land because you think you owe it to me or to your mother's memory. If Caleb Cross offers you a different life, a better life, you take it. You understand?" "Papa, promise me." Emma swallowed hard. "I promise." The next stretch passed in a pattern that felt almost sustainable. Emma worked fence contracts during the day, building her reputation and her savings. Evenings were spent with her father, reading to him when he was too weak to hold a book himself, talking through old memories when he was lucid enough to remember them. And often Caleb came by, or she went to the ranch, and they learned each other in small increments. She learned he took his coffee black, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a cattle stampede when he was young, that he had taught himself to read because no one else would. He learned she was terrible at chess, but excellent at poker, that she could fix almost anything mechanical given enough time and the right tools, that she sang when she thought no one was listening. They didn't rush anything, didn't push for declarations or definitions, just existed together in spaces that felt comfortable, building something that didn't have a name yet, but felt solid nonetheless. Thomas Beckworth's fence work took Emma time and paid well enough that she could buy medicine without worrying, could stock her pantry properly, could even set aside a small amount for emergencies. Other jobs followed. Repairs for the Morrison family, new construction for a merchant in town, a complete fence replacement for a widow who had been putting it off for years. People stopped seeing her as Caleb Cross's charity case and started seeing her as Emma Whitaker, skilled laborer, someone who did good work for fair pay. The shift was subtle, but profound. Respect earned rather than given out of pity or obligation. But underneath the growing stability, her father continued to decline. Good days became rare, lucid moments precious. Emma watched him fade in increments, each morning revealing new weakness, new limitations. The laudanum helped with pain, but couldn't stop the inevitable progression. "I want to talk about after," he said one evening when the pain was particularly bad. His voice was reedy, thin as winter wind. "About what you'll do with this place. We don't need to talk about that now." "Yes, we do, because I won't be able to later." He struggled to sit up and Emma helped him, propping pillows behind his back. "The land is yours free and clear, no debt on it. You can sell it, keep it, do whatever you want." "But Emma," his eyes found hers, still sharp despite the failing body. "Don't let it trap you. Your mother and I, we built something here because we had to, because it was the only option available. You have choices now, other paths. Take them. This is our home. This is a piece of ground with a house on it. Home is wherever you decide to build it." He coughed, the effort leaving him gasping. "Caleb came to see me when you were in town working on the Morrison fence." Emma went still. "What did he say?" "Asked my permission to marry you, if you'd have him when the time was right." Her father's smile was faint, but real. "I told him yes. Told him you'd probably fight him on it because you're stubborn as a mule, but that underneath all that pride and self-sufficiency, you want the same things any person wants. Connection, partnership, love." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Marriage. Caleb wanted to marry her, not just court her or be with her, but actually marry her, make it permanent, official, undeniable. "I can't think about that right now," she said, voice shaking. "I can't think about anything except keeping you comfortable and getting through each day." "I know, and I'm not pushing, just wanted you to know. Wanted you to have time to get used to the idea before he actually asks." Her father reached for her hand. "He's a good man, Emma. The kind who'll stand beside you, not in front of you. Who'll let you be strong, while also carrying his share of the weight. That's rare. Don't let fear convince you to refuse it." That night, Emma lay in bed and let herself imagine it. Marriage to Caleb Cross. Living at the ranch, waking up beside him every morning, building a life that looked nothing like the one she had been surviving. It felt impossible and inevitable all at once, like something she had been moving toward since the moment he defended her in the general store. But her father was still alive, still needed her, and she couldn't think beyond that. Not yet. Winter deepened, bringing snow that piled against the house and temperatures that made morning chores brutal. Emma's fence contract slowed as the ground froze too hard to dig. but she had enough money saved to get through until spring. She spent more time at home, more time with her father, watching him slip away by degrees. Caleb came by almost daily now, sometimes bringing food from Martha, sometimes just sitting quietly while Emma's father slept. They didn't talk much during these visits, didn't need to. The comfort was in the presence, the shared vigil, the knowledge that Emma wasn't facing this alone. "Tell me about the ranch," her father said one afternoon, a rare, lucid moment in a sea of confusion. "About what you're building there." Caleb settled into the chair beside the bed, and his voice took on a quality Emma had never heard before. Hope mixed with pride, mixed with vision. "I'm converting the south pasture to orchard. Apple trees mostly, some pear. The soil's perfect for it, and there's a water source that runs year-round. Jake thinks I'm crazy, but I've been researching rootstock and varietals, and I think we could produce fruit that would sell all the way to Denver." "Orchard's hard work," her father said. "Years before you see real profit." "I know, but it's the kind of work that lasts, that builds something for the future." Caleb's eyes flicked to Emma, then back to her father. "I want to build something that matters, something that'll still be here long after I'm gone." "Good man thinks about legacy." Her father's breathing was labored, each word an effort. "What else?" "I'm thinking about expanding the house, adding rooms, maybe a proper library, since I've been collecting books for years, and they're just stacked in boxes right now." He paused, and Emma could feel the weight of what he wasn't saying. Building a home, not just a house, place where people want to gather, where family can grow. Her father smiled, understanding the subtext. "Sounds like a good plan. You'll need help, though. Orchard work, house expansion, running the ranch. That's a lot for one person. I'm hoping I won't be one person for much longer." Caleb looked at Emma directly now, his meaning clear. The moment hung there, heavy with implication and promise, until her father's coughing broke it. Emma helped him drink, administered medicine, watched his face smooth out as the laudanum took hold. Later, when her father slept and Caleb prepared to leave, Emma walked him outside. The evening was clear and cold, stars brilliant against the black sky. "He's not going to last much longer," Emma said quietly. "Another stretch, maybe if we're lucky." "I know." Caleb's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her close against the cold. "I'm sorry. I wish there was something I could do. You're already doing it. Being here. Making sure I'm not alone." She leaned into him, drawing strength from his steady presence. "Caleb, what you said in there about the orchard, about building a home, I meant it. All of it." His voice was low, serious. "I talked to your father because I wanted his blessing, but the decision is yours, always yours. When you're ready, if you're ready, I want to marry you, want to build that future together. But there's no rush, no pressure. Take all the time you need." "What if I'm never ready? What if I can't get past being afraid?" "Then we stay exactly as we are, and that's enough." He turned her to face him, his hands warm on her shoulders. "Emma, you don't owe me anything. Not marriage, not commitment, not even an answer. I'm here because I want to be, because being with you makes my life better. That doesn't change based on what you decide." She kissed him then, sudden and fierce, pouring all her fear and hope and desperate wanting into it. He responded immediately, pulling her closer, and for a moment the cold and the fear and the dying father inside all faded away. There was just this, warmth and connection, and the terrifying, beautiful possibility of more. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Caleb rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe, a probably, a please give me time to think." Emma's hands fisted in his coat. I want to say, yes. I want it so badly it scares me. But I need to get through this first. Need to see my father through to the end, without also trying to navigate what marriage means, and what I'm supposed to do with this land, and how to be someone's wife, when I barely know how to be anything except a survivor. Okay. He kissed her forehead, gentle and understanding. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. Her father died days later in the early hours of morning, when the world was still dark. Emma woke to silence. The absence of his labored breathing somehow louder than the sound had been. She knew before she checked, knew from the quality of the stillness, but she went to him anyway. Sat beside his bed and held his cooling hand and let herself cry for the first time in years. She cried for her father, for her mother, for the childhood she had lost, and the future that would never include either of them. Cried for the girl who had walked into Hastings General Store, desperate and alone, and for the woman who had survived everything life had thrown at her, but still didn't know how to accept kindness without calculating its cost. When the sun finally rose, Emma rode to the Cross Ranch and collapsed into Martha's arms. The older woman held her while she sobbed, stroking her hair and murmuring comfort, asking no questions and offering no platitudes, just solid human comfort in the face of inevitable loss. Caleb made the arrangements, the coffin, the burial plot, the small ceremony. Emma led him, too hollowed out to manage the logistics of death. People came to pay respects, more than she had expected. Neighbors she barely knew, people from town who had bought her fence work, even Catherine Morrison in somber black, looking genuinely sorry. They buried her father on a hill overlooking his land, and Emma stood there thinking about all the promises she had made him. Don't stay here out of obligation. Take the better life if it's offered. Build something that matters. After everyone left, she sat beside the fresh grave and talked to him, like he could still hear. Told him about her fears, her hopes, the decision she was struggling to make. The wind picked up, cold and sharp, and Emma imagined it was his answer. Keep going, keep fighting, keep living. Back at the homestead that night, the silence was unbearable. No labored breathing, no request for water or medicine, no quiet conversations in the dark. Just Emma alone in a house that suddenly felt too big and too small all at once. She couldn't stay here, not anymore. The land her father had worked himself to death to keep alive. The house her mother had died in. It was all just weight now. Beautiful, meaningful weight. But weight nonetheless. Caleb found her the next morning packing her mother's dishes into crates, moving with mechanical precision. What are you doing? Clearing out, deciding what to keep and what to let go. Emma wrapped a teacup carefully, set it aside. I'm going to sell the land. I can't work it alone, can't keep it going. And staying here just feels like I'm clinging to something that's already gone. You don't have to decide that right now. You're grieving. I know exactly what I'm doing. She turned to face him, and her voice was steady despite the tears on her face. My father told me not to let this place trap me, not to stay out of obligation or guilt. And he was right. This land, it's not mine. Not really. It was theirs. My mother's and father's dream. I need to find my own. Caleb crossed the room, took her hands in his. What's your dream, Emma? She looked at him. The man who had defended her, employed her, cared for her, loved her without asking for anything in return. This man who wanted to build orchards and libraries and a home that meant something. This man who saw her clearly and wanted her anyway. I want to build something that lasts, she said quietly. Want to take all this survival and hardship and fear and turn it into something beautiful. Something that grows instead of just endures. She squeezed his hands. I want to do that with you, if the offer still stands. His smile was brilliant, joyful, unguarded. The offer stands. Then yes. Yes to marriage. Yes to the orchard. Yes to building a home together. Yes to all of it. Caleb pulled her close, held her while she cried again. These tears different from the ones before. Relief mixed with grief, mixed with hope. All of it, tangled together in her chest like spring roots breaking through winter ground. They married quietly soon after, just them and Martha and Jake standing witness. No ceremony, no celebration, just honest words spoken in the ranch house parlor. Emma wore the blue dress she had made for the Founders' Day celebration, and Caleb wore his work clothes, and Martha cried happy tears while Jake tried to pretend he wasn't crying at all. Afterward, Emma went back to the homestead one last time to finish packing. She walked through each room, said goodbye to the ghosts that lived there, thanked the walls for keeping her safe. Then, she locked the door and rode away without looking back. The ranch became hers as much as Caleb's, a shared space that they built together. She took over the orchard project, researching rootstock and soil amendments and grafting techniques with the same intensity she had brought to fence work. Caleb handled the cattle operation, and together they planned expansion, dreamed bigger than either of them had dared to dream alone. Emma's fence business continued, now operating from the ranch with Jake's help coordinating contracts. She built a reputation across counties, the woman who did work that lasted, who charged fair prices and delivered quality. The money went into the orchard, into improvements, into the future they were building branch by branch. Some nights Emma woke up afraid, convinced she would wake to find it all gone, revealed as temporary as everything else in her life had been. But Caleb was always there, solid and real, pulling her close and reminding her this was permanent. This was home. Spring came eventually, the way it always did, and with it the first green shoots in the orchard. Small things, fragile things, but growing. Emma stood among the young trees with dirt under her nails and hope in her chest, and thought about the girl who had walked into Hastings' general store, convinced she was nothing. That girl had been wrong. She had been worth defending, worth employing, worth loving. She had been strong enough to survive and brave enough to want more than survival. And now she was building something that would outlast her, something that mattered, something that turned all that hardship into purpose. Caleb found her there, among the trees, wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood together, watching things grow. The orchard that would become legendary across the territory started here. In this moment, with two people who had both been broken by life and decided to build something beautiful from the pieces. Emma had spent so long just trying to survive. Now, finally, she was living. And it was terrifying and glorious, and more than she had ever let herself dream of having. The frontier had tried to break her. Instead, she had learned to bend, to adapt, to fight back. And in the end, she hadn't just survived it. She had reshaped it entirely. The orchard didn't grow overnight. Nothing worth having ever did. That first spring, Emma learned patience in ways fence work had never required. You could build a fence in days, see immediate results, know exactly what you had accomplished. Trees were different. Trees demanded faith. Faith that roots were spreading underground where you couldn't see them. Faith that winter dormancy wasn't death. Faith that all this work would matter years from now, when the first real harvest came in. Some mornings, Emma woke up convinced the whole project was foolish. that they would sink everything into dirt and hope and end up with nothing. Those mornings, Caleb would find her standing among the saplings at dawn, chewing her thumbnail and calculating failure. "They're growing," he would say, pointing to buds that looked exactly the same as they had yesterday. "You can't see that." "Yes, I can. Look closer." And she would. And then maybe there would be a new leaf unfurling, or a branch that had thickened imperceptibly, and Emma would feel the tight thing in her chest loosen slightly. Not gone, never fully gone, but manageable. By summer, the trees had established enough that Emma could focus on other projects. The house expansion started, adding rooms that would eventually become the library Caleb wanted, and a proper workshop for Emma's tools. They worked alongside the hired men, Emma hammering nails and carrying lumber like she had been doing it her whole life, Caleb measuring. With meticulous care, "People are talking," Martha mentioned one afternoon, bringing lemonade to the work crew. Saying it's strange, a rancher's wife doing manual labor. "People always talk." Emma wiped sweat from her forehead, leaving a streak of dirt. "Let them." "I'm not criticizing, just warning you that Catherine Morrison's been making comments about propriety and proper roles." Emma laughed, sharp and humorless. "Catherine Morrison can mind her own business. I didn't marry Caleb to sit in a parlor doing needlepoint. I married him to build something that matters." Martha's smile was approving. "Good. Just wanted to make sure you knew what you were walking into." What Emma was walking into turned out to be a summer of gossip and judgment from the very people who had started respecting her fence work. Apparently, it was acceptable for poor Emma Whitaker to do manual labor when she was desperate. But wealthy Emma Cross should know her place. The hypocrisy would have been funny if it wasn't so exhausting. "Ignore them," Caleb said one evening after a particularly awkward encounter in town. Mrs. Pemberton had loudly wondered why Emma bothered learning about grafting techniques when surely the ranch could afford proper orchardists. "I'm trying. But it's like no matter what I do, it's wrong. If I'd stayed poor and desperate, I'd be pitiful. Now that I'm not, I'm presumptuous." Emma threw her gloves down harder than necessary. "I can't win. You're not trying to win. You're trying to live your life." Caleb pulled her close, rested his chin on top of her head. "Let them talk. In years, when this orchard is producing, and we're shipping fruit across territories, they'll pretend they supported us all along." "You sound very confident." "I am confident. I've got the smartest, most stubborn, most capable partner anyone could ask for. We're going to make this work." The conviction in his voice steadied her, the way it always did. Emma had spent so long being self-sufficient that accepting partnership, really accepting it, not just going through the motions, was harder than she had expected. She kept catching herself shouldering entire problems alone, forgetting she could ask for help, defaulting to the survival mechanisms that had kept her alive, but also kept her isolated. "I'm not good at this," she admitted, at being married, at sharing decisions and asking instead of just doing. "You think I am? I lived alone for years before you. I'm still learning too." Caleb pulled back to look at her. "We're both making this up as we go. That's okay. That's normal. Nothing about us is normal. Thank God for that. Normal's boring." By fall, the house expansion was complete, and the orchard had survived its first full growing season. The trees were still small, still years away from production, but they were alive and thriving. Emma walked among them every morning, checking growth, looking for disease or pest damage, learning to read the subtle language of leaves and bark. Jake started teaching her the business side of ranching, accounts and contracts, market prices and transport logistics. Emma absorbed it all with the same intensity she brought to everything, filling notebooks with information, asking questions that made Jake think harder about systems he had been running on autopilot for years. "You're going to be running this place someday," Jake said during one of their sessions. "Might as well know how everything works. Caleb runs the ranch. Caleb runs the cattle operation. You're building something bigger." Jake tapped her notebook. "This orchard, your fence business, the contracts you're negotiating. You're turning this from a ranch into an enterprise. That requires different skills." Emma hadn't thought about it that way, but Jake was right. The orchard alone would eventually require employees, distribution networks, storage facilities. Her fence business was already operating across counties, with more requests coming in than she could handle personally. They were building something that would outlast them, and that required thinking beyond just the next season. "I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of responsibility." "Nobody's ever ready. You just do it anyway and hope you don't screw up too badly." Jake closed the ledger they had been reviewing. "Besides, you've got good instincts. Trust them." That winter was harsh, temperatures dropping so low that even the cattle struggled. Emma spent weeks worrying about the orchard, checking the trees obsessively for frost damage, wrapping the youngest saplings in burlap like she was tucking children into bed. "They'll survive," Caleb assured her. "Apple trees are tough. They're built for this." What if they're not? What if we lose them all and have to start over? Then we start over. We've started over before. But they didn't lose them. Spring came, and the trees budded right on schedule, and Emma felt something in her chest that might have been pride, or relief, or just the simple satisfaction of having faith rewarded. The second year brought challenges that had nothing to do with trees or weather. Emma's old homestead sold to a family from back east, people with more money than sense, who thought frontier farming would be romantic. Emma watched them arrive with their fancy equipment and optimistic plans, and knew they would be gone within time. The land was too poor, the water too scarce. They would learn the same lesson her family had learned. Some ground just wasn't meant to give back what you put into it. But the money from the sale gave Emma and Caleb capital to expand the orchard, to buy more rootstock, and hire additional help. They brought in men who knew fruit cultivation, and Emma learned everything they had to teach, asking questions until they stopped being surprised by her knowledge and started treating her like a colleague instead of the boss's wife. "She's got a real feel for it," one of them told Caleb. "Most people, they follow the rules because that's what you do. She understands why the rules exist, when to break them, when to adapt. That's rare." Her fence business continued to grow, and Emma made a decision that felt both necessary and terrifying. She hired help. 2 young men who needed work, who had no skills, but were willing to learn. She taught them the way Jake had taught her, patiently, thoroughly, expecting excellence, but allowing for mistakes. "You're good at this," Caleb observed one evening, watching her demonstrate proper post setting to her crew. "Teaching, leading. Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised. I'm impressed." He leaned against the fence line, studying her. "You've changed since we met. You're more confident, more sure of yourself. Or maybe you just didn't know me when I was sure of myself. You met me at my lowest point. Fair, but I still think you've grown. We both have." It was true. Marriage had changed them both in ways Emma was still cataloging. Caleb was softer now, more willing to show vulnerability, less concerned with appearing unshakable. Emma was learning to accept help without seeing it as weakness, to ask for what she needed instead of suffering in silence. They still fought sometimes, usually about stupid things. Whose turn it was to deal with a problem, how much to invest in expansion versus saving for emergencies, whether to attend social functions they both dreaded. But the fights didn't scare Emma the way she had feared they would. They fought, worked it out, moved forward. No one left. No one weaponized vulnerability or used love as leverage. It was, Emma realized with some surprise, healthy. This was what healthy partnership looked like. By the third spring, the first trees began producing fruit. Not much, just enough to confirm that the whole project wasn't insane, that they actually knew what they were doing. Emma picked the first apple with shaking hands, examined it for flaws, then bit into it. The taste was perfect, crisp and sweet with just enough tartness, the kind of apple that would sell itself if they could produce it at scale. Well, Caleb appeared beside her, trying to look casual and failing. Emma handed him the apple. He took a bite, and his expression shifted to match what she was feeling. Triumph mixed with relief, mixed with the stunning realization that they had actually done it. "We need to scale up production," Emma said, already planning. "If we can get even half the trees producing fruit this good, we'll have buyers competing for contracts. But we'll need storage, proper distribution, maybe our own transport." "Slow down." Caleb caught her hands, stilling her manic gesturing. "We've got time. Let's enjoy this moment before we start planning the empire." Emma forced herself to breathe, to be present. They stood there among the trees they had planted together, eating the fruit of literal years of labor, and she let herself feel the full weight of accomplishment. They had done this, together, built something that would outlast them both. That summer, the orchard produced enough fruit to sell locally. Emma negotiated contracts with stores in towns, pricing competitively, but not desperately. The fruit sold faster than they had anticipated, people coming back for more, spreading word that Cross Ranch apples were worth the price. By fall, they had made enough profit to pay back their initial investment and fund the next year's expansion. Jake ran the numbers 3 times, convinced he had made a mistake, but the math was solid. They were actually profitable. In time. "Most orchards take years before they're in the black," one of the cultivation experts said, shaking his head in disbelief. "You two have done something special here." The success attracted attention, not all of it welcome. Other ranchers wanted to know their techniques, their root stock sources, their secret. Emma shared what she could. She wasn't interested in hoarding knowledge, but she also knew that success wasn't just about information. It was about work, persistence, willingness to adapt, and faith that effort would eventually pay off. Some people had that. Most didn't. Catherine Morrison showed up at the ranch one afternoon, dressed for visiting, and carrying what looked like genuine contrition. "I owe you an apology," she said when Emma answered the door. "Several, actually. I've been dismissive and judgmental, and, frankly, threatened by you since the day you arrived in Red Hollow." Emma leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Why threatened?" "Because you represent everything I'm not. You work for what you have. You're not afraid to get your hands dirty. And you've built something real, while the rest of us just maintain what was given to us." Catherine's smile was self-deprecating. "It's easier to look down on people than to acknowledge they might be doing something you're too afraid to attempt yourself. That's surprisingly honest. I'm trying to be better, trying to do more than just host parties and judge people." Catherine hesitated. "I was wondering if you'd consider teaching me about orchard management. I have land that's sitting unused, and I'd like to do something productive with it." Emma studied her, looking for the angle, the hidden agenda. But Catherine's expression was earnest, almost vulnerable. And Emma remembered being the person everyone doubted, everyone dismissed. "Come back Tuesday morning," Emma said. "Bring work clothes and a notebook. I'll show you what we're doing, but I won't do it for you. You want to learn? You work alongside us." Catherine's smile was brilliant. "Thank you, truly." Teaching Catherine turned into teaching several other ranch wives who were tired of being decorative and wanted to contribute something tangible. Emma found herself running informal classes, sharing knowledge about cultivation and business and the reality of making things grow. Some of the women lasted a week before deciding it was too hard. Others stuck with it, transforming unused land into productive orchards, creating their own versions of what Emma and Caleb had built. "You're changing the territory," Martha observed one evening, watching Emma sketch out grafting techniques for a group of eager students, "giving people permission to be more than what they were born into." "I'm just sharing information. You're doing more than that. You're showing them it's possible." Martha's voice was soft. "You know how many women in Red Hollow have spent years believing their only value was in looking pretty and producing children? You've proven there's another way. That matters." Emma had never thought about her impact that way, but looking around the room at women who were arguing about rootstock selection and frost protection strategies, she saw Martha was right. They weren't just learning about orchards. They were learning they could learn, could contribute, could build things that mattered. The year brought the first real harvest, bushels and bushels of apples, more than they could sell locally, requiring the distribution network Emma had been building. They shipped fruit to Denver, to mining towns in the mountains, to settlements along the territorial borders. The Cross Ranch apples developed a reputation. Quality fruit at fair prices, consistently excellent. Money started coming in faster than Emma knew how to manage. She hired an accountant, someone who understood territorial commerce and could help them navigate the complexities of expansion. They bought more land for additional orchard plots, hired more workers, built storage facilities. Emma's fence business had become almost secondary, something she did occasionally for special clients, but mostly delegated to the crew she had trained. They operated under her name, maintained her standards, and split profits fairly. It ran itself, which freed Emma to focus on the orchard and the increasingly complex business side of what they were building. "We should incorporate," the accountant suggested. "Establish this as a formal business entity, Cross Ranch Orchards. It'll protect your personal assets and make expansion easier." Emma looked at Caleb across the desk. "What do you think?" "I think we stopped being just a ranch years ago. Might as well make it official." So they did. Cross Ranch Orchards became a legal entity, with Emma and Caleb as equal partners, Jake as operations manager, and a board that included Martha and 2 other advisors. It felt impossibly official, impossibly real. Emma was young and running a business empire. The girl who had walked into Hastings' general store desperate for medicine had become a woman who employed people and shipped product across territories. The transformation should have felt unbelievable, but it didn't. It felt earned. That fall, Emma made a pilgrimage to her father's grave, something she did every few months. She sat on the hill and told him everything about the orchard, the business, the life she had built, about Caleb and partnership, and learning to accept love without calculating its cost. "You'd be proud," she said to the marker. "Or maybe you'd say, 'I told you so.' Either way, you were right about not letting fear stop me, about taking the risk, about building something that matters." The wind picked up, cool with the promise of winter, and Emma imagined it was his answer. "I know. I always knew." Winter came hard that year, the hardest in a decade, according to the old-timers. Temperatures dropped so low that livestock died, pipes froze, and people who had survived many winters wondered if they would make it through this one. The orchard went dormant under deep snow, and Emma could only trust that the roots were strong enough, the trees hardy enough to survive what was coming. She spent the winter months planning the next phase of expansion, reviewing contracts, teaching advanced cultivation techniques to her core team. The work kept her hands busy and her mind focused, prevented her from dwelling on all the ways things could still go wrong. "You're doing it again," Caleb said one evening, finding her hunched over ledgers at midnight. "Catastrophizing." "I'm planning for contingencies. You're inventing disasters that might never happen." He closed her notebook gently but firmly. "The orchard will survive. The business will survive. We will survive. You don't have to control every variable to ensure that." "I know. Emma struggled for words. "I keep waiting for it to fall apart, for this to be revealed as temporary, as something I don't get to keep." "Emma." Caleb pulled her to her feet, wrapped her in his arms. "This is real. This is permanent. You're not that desperate girl anymore. You're a successful businesswoman, a skilled orchardist, my partner in every sense of the word. When are you going to let yourself believe that?" "I'm trying. Try harder." He kissed her forehead. "You've earned this. All of it. Stop waiting for permission to accept it." Spring arrived like an apology, warm and generous, melting the snow and bringing the orchard back to life. Emma walked among the trees with her crew, assessing damage, planning the year's work. They had lost a small percentage of the trees to the extreme cold, a manageable loss, all things considered. "Could have been worse," Jake observed. "Could have been a lot worse." By summer, the orchard was in full production, producing more fruit than they had projected. They had to hire additional workers just for harvest, bringing the total employment to dozens of people. Emma oversaw it all, managing logistics and quality control, and making decisions that affected dozens of families. The responsibility was enormous, also exhilarating. One afternoon, Emma was in the orchard solving a pest problem when a fancy carriage pulled up to the main house. She watched from a distance as a well-dressed man emerged, looking around with obvious confusion. Probably someone looking to place a bulk order, finding it strange that the business was actually run from a working ranch. She walked over, wiping her hands on her work pants, aware she looked exactly like what she was, someone who had spent the day in the dirt. "Can I help you?" The man looked her over with barely concealed disdain. "I'm looking for the proprietor. I have business to discuss." "You're talking to her. Emma Cross, co-owner of Cross Ranch Orchards." His expression shifted from disdain to confusion. "You're the owner?" "But I was told." "Told what?" "Told that owners wear fancy clothes and sit in offices." Emma's voice was pleasant. Her eyes were not. "Sorry to disappoint. This is a working orchard and I work it. Now, what can I help you with?" He recovered, barely, and launched into his pitch. He represented a consortium of investors who wanted to buy Cross Ranch Orchards outright, fold it into a larger agricultural company, pay Emma and Caleb handsomely for what they had built. Emma let him finish, then said simply, "No." "You haven't heard my offer yet." "Don't need to. We're not selling." "Mrs. Cross, perhaps you should discuss this with your husband before making such a hasty decision." "My husband will say the same thing I'm saying. We're not interested in selling. We built this to last, to be ours, to pass down. It's not for sale." The man tried several more angles, appealing to practicality, suggesting she didn't understand business, implying she would regret refusing. Emma listened patiently, then walked him back to his carriage and watched him drive away. Caleb found her still standing there, arms crossed, expression thunderous. "What was that about?" "Someone wanted to buy us out. I said no." "Good." He slipped an arm around her waist. Though, you could have heard the offer. Might have been substantial. I don't care how substantial it was. This isn't about money. It's about building something that's ours, that we control, that means something beyond profit. Emma leaned into him. I didn't fight this hard to survive, just to sell out the first time someone waves money at me. I love you, Caleb said simply. Have I mentioned that lately? Not in the last few hours. Well, I do. I love that you're fierce and stubborn and absolutely uncompromising when it comes to things that matter. I love that you still get your hands dirty, even though you could hire someone else to do it. I love that you've built all this and still see yourself as just someone who's trying her best. Emma turned in his arms, looked up at him. I love you too. Even though you're a terrible dancer and you steal the blankets, and you think planning ahead is what other people do. We balance each other out. Yeah, we do. That fall, Emma stood on the porch of their expanded house and watched wagons loaded with apples roll out toward Denver. The harvest, the most successful yet. Fruit that would reach dinner tables hundreds of miles away. Behind her, the house held rooms full of books and memories, and the life they had built. Around her, the orchard stretched in neat rows, trees heavy with fruit that proved patience could actually pay off. In town, she was no longer poor Emma Whitaker or even Caleb Cross's wife. She was Emma Cross, orchardist and businesswoman, someone who had built an empire from dirt and determination. The women who had once mocked her dress now sought her advice. The men who had dismissed her now negotiated with her as an equal. But the victory Emma treasured most had nothing to do with money or status or proving anyone wrong. It was the quiet moments with Caleb, discussing the next year's planting. It was teaching young women that they could be more than decorative. It was walking through the orchard and seeing tangible proof that faith and work could actually create something beautiful. She thought about this girl she had been, desperate, afraid, measuring worth in survival days. That girl had believed she was nothing, that the best she could hope for was to endure. She had been so wrong. Emma had never been nothing. She had been a seed waiting for the right conditions to grow. She had needed soil and water and light, but she had always had the potential. Caleb hadn't saved her. He had just given her space to save herself. Now she was teaching others to do the same, giving them space to grow, to build, to become more than what the world tried to make them. The orchard was just fruit trees, but it was also proof. Proof that if you worked hard enough, believed stubbornly enough, refused to quit, even when quitting looked smart, you could turn nothing into something that mattered. Winter was coming again, but Emma didn't fear it anymore. The orchard would go dormant, the business would slow, and they would spend the cold months planning and dreaming and preparing for spring. Then the cycle would repeat, year after year, building something that would outlast them both. She had survived the frontier, yes, but more than that, she had claimed it, bent it to her will, made it give back more than it took. Years from now, people would eat Cross Ranch apples and never think about the woman who had planted the first trees. They wouldn't know about the fence work, or the dying father, or the general store humiliation. They wouldn't know how hard she had fought to transform survival into success. But Emma would know, and that was enough. She walked into the house where Caleb was reading by lamplight, curled up beside him on the sofa, and let herself feel completely, utterly content. Not happy in the thoughtless way of people who had never struggled, but satisfied in the bone-deep way of someone who had earned every good thing she had. Outside the orchard waited for spring. Inside Emma Cross, no longer Emma Whitaker, no longer that desperate girl, finally believed she deserved the life she had built. And in the end, that belief was worth more than all the apples and all the orchards across all the territories combined.